Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom Into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
Good evening, my friends. Thank you for joining us tonight. Those of you that are just coming in, you missed the classic Godzilla. But I wanted to thank you guys for joining us and our pursuits to talk about, discuss, learn about sake tonight. And I am not the guy to be able to do that for you because I feel pretty out of place when I get to a point of trying to order sake. I know I've had some great ones. And so I leaned on some friends of mine to come and help us. And on our Zoom tonight, a couple of great experts, Satoshi Tanaka, owner of the import company that represents the sake that we're tasting tonight, and Eduardo Dingler, expert from SOM TV and fellow wine judge. How are you, Eduardo?
I am great, guys. It is a pleasure to be here, and anytime we can talk sake and share with more people, making the family bigger, life is good.
Cool. Well, I start off with a little panoramic hello to my friends here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Lisa Test, Hector and Gina. The Prunks are on the video. Sarah, you guys, thank you very much for being there. Hi, Pablo. Kristen Wilson, thank you very much. Good to see you. Mr. Weaver, so nice. Setsuko always joins us from Japan, so it's a very appropriate to have you on the Zoom tonight. Setsuko, thank you very much for being with us. And the Angel family, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We've been Zooming now for over a year. I can't believe it. And this has been a twice a week occurrence for us. We're just starting to plan some live events to complement our Zooms. Our Zooms are not going away, but sometimes they may appear to be, if we don't get a lot of interest, I will always create stuff. Not everybody gets excited by it, so I don't get offended, but it's very nice to have you here when you can be here. And I'm glad the interest in this tonight is here. Hi, Setsuko. Good to see you. I've never seen your face before. Thank you for coming on the Zoom. All right. So with that, let's begin. We've got 3 sake, and I numbered the jars 1, 2, and 3. I'll show you the products. If you want to go ahead and pour the first wine. While Eduardo and I are going to talk through a few, maybe a dozen slides, and we're going to try to do a little game here, Eduardo.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll try to cover what sake is and what it's not and how it's produced, and try to answer as many questions as we can, which I'm known to, sometimes it takes me 4 hours to go through the whole thing, but we're going to compress it today.
Yeah, we're going to compress it by doing a little game, okay? We can't spend more than a minute per slide.
Awesome.
All right. So what we want to do is do like the greatest hits of sake information here really quickly. And for those of you that are watching this presentation, I'll send out this slideshow at the end so you can study this thing to the nth degree and gather even more detail. But the art of learning about sake is probably greater than 1 hour will give us. But we're going to get some really like the high level stuff here. So here we go, buddy.
Excellent. So there's several different guilds or schools of sake making in Japan. So this is kind of looking at the broad spectrum and try to sort of seeing how it's divided. And I'm actually going to just touch on a couple of things here. It's almost non-relevant for what we're doing today, but it's important to know that all these regions have their little guilds and schools, and they tend to have certain yeast strains that they use or methods of production combines with their regionality that has a big impact on what's done. Something very important is the water, which is a huge component of sake, and minerality in the water adds a lot of depth, complexity, and richness when it's hard mineral water from like the south generally. And it could be also very soft and snow melt, if you will, which provides a lot of silkiness in the sake, which we'll have a couple of these examples today. And those tend to be from high elevation, northern parts of Japan, with mountain ranges and such. So that directly correlates to the schools of the Tojis, which is the brewmasters. This is a little bit, this is sort of like the character of sake. And these slides are a little more academic and a little more all over the place from Sake Times. But basically here we're talking about kanji, and so you can recognize the third little symbol in there. That's what you will recognize for sake or alcohol. A very important thing about sake. So the word sake itself, it is means alcohol in Japan. So if you go to a bar, a restaurant, and you say, I'll take sake, they're gonna look at you and say, what do you like? You like whiskey, beer, tequila, whatever it is. So sake as we know it, this one in particular, this sake, it's called Nihonshu, which means Japanese alcohol, if you will. So that's more centralized, but the way that as it began to be exported in the world decades ago, it was just much easier to name it sake, and that's what represented the country on the outside. So what it is, as I mentioned, there's the main ingredients, rice. It's the core of what sake is. There are about 200 plus 200 strains of rice that are utilized to making sake. So there's a few father rices, if you will, which can be identified as Yamada Nishiki. There's Omachi. Also, you'll hear a lot about Gokyako Mangoku. Easy for me to say, or anybody that's practiced a lot, but sounds like a little riddle. But all these strains of rice bring a little something different to the party. Dewa Sansan, Dewa Sato, all these different rice strains bring a little more shape into the final product. And what happens to the rice here to produce sake, it's the polishing out of the outer layers of sake that creates the grades. So basic measurements on sake, a bottle, it's 4 gos, it's a 720 ml. There's also 1.8 bottle, as you can see behind me here. So 1.8 is 10 gos, which means 180 mLs. And basically, that's how the measurements work. So a 1.8 liter, which is the most common throughout Japan and it has been forever, it's basically 10 pours. The ochoko, which is the little cups that are used for either drinking sake or to judge competitions, they're 36 mLs normally. However, my collection ranges in all different sizes and shapes and colors. But that's basically how it's divided in terms of that. So here we have a little more representation. The first one you can see is an ochoko. There's a sakazuki, which is a little more flat, if you will. Guinomi, there's the wine glass, of course, which is a lot of the times preferred to drink sake, especially when you're doing it educationally or just to get the most out of it. Something very important about glasses is that Riedel and Schutzwiesel and all these companies have done a lot of research to deliver something that not only gives you the aromas jumping out of the glass, but also the way it hits your palate. This rim here, and when you're drinking out of an ochoko, it's quite traditional and it's a beautiful part of the culture, but it's not really designed to get the most out of the aromas and textures out of it. Masu, it's a little box, which is right here. So little masu boxes is what traditionally you used to have to drink sake back in the day. So a regular person would bring a box like this to work, get paid in rice, and get it back home. The wife would start cooking the rice and washing it while he would go to the bar, drink sake out of this cup, which is 180 mLs right here. I mean, sorry, a little smaller, but they would fill it up with sake. You drink the sake, and when the rice is ready, you come back home and have dinner with your wife and the family and whatnot. So something very traditional. It's made of little wood or taro, which smells delicious. And then we have a regular glass, which those fit inside the little masu box. And you've probably seen at your local mom and pop's place or fun place like that, where they'll over pour the sake into the cup. And it's a sign of generosity. So the way to drink it, very important. Don't ever drink it out of the masu cup. Always drink it out of the glass and then refill it from the cup and keep drinking it out of the glass.
Did not know that.
Rule of thumb.
Okay.
This is a porous surface which doesn't clean very well, and the health department does not like it. And you cannot run it thoroughly to a dishwasher and stuff. So always drink out of a glass.
I'm pretty sure 20 years ago, I went to a sushi bar where everybody got one of those, and you could put your name on it and put it on the wall and do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I miss those places. So here's the production, basically in a nutshell. You get the rice as you get it at your local store. Let's say you get brown rice. It's been harvested, it's been dried. So you take away out of the outer layers of it to create the grates, as I mentioned. The closer you get to the heart or shinpaku of the rice, you get a little more finesse, a little even more floral, more aromatics, really showcasing the purity of the sake. Not better or worse, just a different style. So the rice then gets washed and soaked just for a very meticulous amount of time, and then it gets steamed to kind of activate it. And then it's split into two parts. Basically, one part has the koji, in which the koji, which is this mold, gets spread all over on top of the rice. And this will activate or break down the rice, so the rice itself starts turning into sugars, if you will. And then the yeast comes in play and converts that into alcohol. Because if you look at a grape, right? When you're making wine, one grape has sugar. So you press the grape and you leave it there, it's going to inevitably convert into alcohol at some point, because yeast was going to come in and move it. But rice doesn't have that sugar component. So you need the koji in order to make sake. It'll come in, break it down, get the party going, and then the yeast will just get it done as it should. Then there's a little bit of storage after the koji making. It's a little bit, sorry, went all over the place. Koji making, there's a little bit of yeast, and the starter starts happening with water, and all four parts start playing a little part of the fermentation, which may take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, depending on the style. And then there's the mashing, there's the pressing, where you're gonna filter out the product and then store it. And then from there, it'll go through a pasteurization or two, depending on the style, and then get shipped.
Very interesting. And once they get it all the way through the process, is there anything left of that rice, or is it completely dissolved, cooked off?
Oh no, the rice is fascinating because it's called kasu, sake kasu, and the rice gets pressed and becomes a paste, if you will. And it is amazing for beauty products. You might, if you haven't seen it yet, this is gonna come in your radar at some point. But basically they say brewmasters and toji, they have the softest hands in the world because this is so good for your skin that they're working with the kasu and the rice itself, that it just softens your hands. So they're creating a number of different cosmetic applications and beauty products out of it. There's also soaps made out of the kasu. You can also eat it. It's delicious. So there's out of the byproducts, first of all, of the polishing, you get all this bran and you make amazing crackers and cookies and all these different things, or feed it to like cattle and things like that. And then the press product that goes to convert into, as I mentioned, aesthetic products that have taken off.
That's a great idea. I bet they're fantastic. My hands feel softer just talking about it.
I'm sure everybody else's too. So here's like, sort of like.
Did I skip a slide? Let me just, okay, good. I'm in the right spot. It stuck for a second. All right, good. Go ahead.
So here we have how the rice itself being polished, milled away, you get to the different grades. So if you start on the left side, you have 90% remaining. So that means only a little bit of the outer layer went out. And it retains more richness, more so-called terroir in the wine world, more complexity and flavor. And as you start getting closer and closer to the heart, all the way on the last little rice drawing there, you get just to the heart. And as I mentioned, it's the purity, it's very clean, often tends to be a little more aromatic, more floral. But there's a couple things that go in combination here. So there is less yields going on because you're taking all that off out of the grain of rice. And then all the time that took to get to that level takes about 3 days to polish just to 50%. with the machines they use. So you're taking all this time and less yield. So 99% of the time, a daiginjo level, which is what you call it, 50% or more, it's going to be more expensive. So the third one we're trying today, for instance, is Junmai Daiginjo, and it's sort of like that clean, elegant, and we'll get there. We will taste and talk about all of those. There's a second category that you see in the bottom of this chart, and that is called Hon Jozo. So Hon Jozo, although we're not tasting any of Hon Jozos today, it's a portion that's very relevant, and I actually love Hon Jozos. There's brewer's alcohol added to the sake. So it always kind of, it took me a while to understand, and I expect everyone to kind of reason a little bit. But basically, and I'll tell you why it started. I'm going to take more than a minute on this slide. I might take it off somewhere else. But basically, during the Second World War, there's a shortage of food throughout Japan. So the government goes to the producers. Back then, everything was made with the 4 ingredients: water, rice, koji, and yeast, purely. The government goes to the producers, sits them in a round table and says, listen, we're gonna still drink, and we have to drink. We're in a crisis, but we have to feed the civilians and the troops. So come up with something. They scratch their heads for a while and come up with this product, which is Hon Jozo. It's the 4 ingredients. You make this much sake. You add a little bit of brewer's alcohol, which is nothing designated by law. It can be, as long as it's pure and clean, it can be made of sugar cane, which is the most popular these days, wheat, it can be sake that's been distilled. So you add a little bit of that alcohol and then you water it down. So you end up with a similar, if not the same average of alcohol at the end of the day. But what this created, and still does, it's an uplifted aromatic. And the way it hits your palate, it's like more sharp, it's focused, where generally Junmai, which means pure rice, as you can see here, that one tends to have a little more viscosity and richness and flavor, if that kind of makes sense.
Okay, well, we there's a lot to absorb here, and let's get started with whoa, we got another slide, buddy.
Yes, there you go. So basically you have the different parts going on here on how it's breaking down the fermentation. So the starch in the rice, naturally, as I mentioned with the koji, it's coming in and breaking it down to create the glucose. And then when the yeast is introduced, it comes and grabs this glucose and directly converts it into alcohol. So it's called a multiple parallel fermentation, and it's very unique to sake world. And at the end of the day, how sake is brewed, it's more similar to beer than it is to wine. And that's why it's called brew and a brewery, if you will.
I thought this was cool to look at, yeah.
This was very interesting, and it puts it a lot in perspective. So as I mentioned, some of the father rice strains, Yamada Nishiki, which is second to last that you see in there, it's one of the highest sought after, sort of like the Cabernet Sauvignon of rice strains, but it's very picky. Since the stalks are taller, they tend to break easily. So you can lose your crop very easy if there's a storm, winds, things like this. Omachi even taller. And omachi provides this incredible kind of like acidity to it and focus. Miyama Nishiki, which is commonly more grown in parts of Nagano and such, it's a little more lower height. And Gohyaku Mangoku, which we're actually tasting in the first one we're tasting today, tends to be a little easier to grow. It is one of the preferred rice strains for Niigata, which we'll get in depth about the region. And Koshi Hikari, it's the short grain or short grain table rice. And it's the most common, one of the most common strains. That's what you would find all the way from a sushi place to just table side. And commonly, you rarely use table rice for sake production. Although there are some producers proving that it can be done and well, it's not common and it's not sort of like well seen, if you will.
Understand.
And here the sort of like the breakdown of the rice itself. So you have the bran on the outside that I mentioned, you get it out and you have some outstanding crackers and things like that to go with your sake. There's the proteins, the vitamins, the lipids, and the starch component in there. And then you get into what we're really looking for sake production. So there's also this two styles, very important. Whenever you see a Genshu on the label, it means undiluted. So 90% of the sake gets water added once it's fermented and it's resting. And it's just more common to find it like that. It brings down the alcohol a little lower, which is an average about 15%, what you will find. So if you kind of compare it to wine, it's like a glass of Zinfandel in California, if you will. But Genshu will really capture more flavor, more richness, and compact concentration because they never added water to that.
What would the alcohol in a Genshu be?
It can reach all the way up to 22. I've seen, commonly, even higher. But yeah, your sweet spot is around 20 for that.
Cool.
Here it is, the sake kazu. So this is the leaves that are spent and after pressing the sake. And here's some of the applications. Amazake is something that kids love. It's like sweet sake that has no alcohol. You can cook with it. You can do sweets. As I mentioned, pies, cookies, things like that. Pickling, this is something that Chef Morimoto, who I worked with for a while, loved to do, pickling with kazu. And also fertilized cattle feed, skincare, and distilled liquor. And I will say the most popular to watch for, it's the skincare again. It is coming strong.
Is that why Satoshi looks so young and so...
That's his secret. I've never gotten him to admit it, but I think it is.
He's actually 110 years old. So it's amazing.
The filtering process here. So you have the pressing of the actual tank, which can be done in several ways. It can be the most common. It's in a big press. I'd see the most average is like the size of a Volkswagen Bug. That's the size of the machine. And you put the sake in and the whole mash into little pockets, and then it presses it with the mechanic force. The other one is called a fune. And basically, you have a wood box, like a coffin, if you will, for lack of better words, wood coffin, and the big bag goes in there, and then you go and press it, almost like you're making tortillas. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to make tortillas or something alike, but you're doing the press and taking out the sake out of that. And the third one is called a shizuku. Well, shizuku is incredible when you find it. Not only is it going to be one of the most expensive things you have in front of you, but it's going to be very just impactfully delicious, soft, and sticky. The way it's done, it's like a tea bag. So you grab the sake, you hang it from the ceiling, and without adding any pressure, you just let it drip. So shizuku is the drip method. And then you have here the process. Muroka refers to skipping the charcoal filtration. So most of the sake goes through this charcoal filtration, and it's just like a Brita filter at home, that you have the charcoal kind of removes away unwanted flavors and aromas and things like that. But you will sometimes come across Muroka sakes that will have a little more flavor, more richness, even a little coloration. And they're quite special, sort of like an homage to artisan style in some way. And then here we have the yields of the pressing. Arabishiri refers to like the first part of the press. The nakadori, which is the second yield, and then the last drops, it's the seme, where a little more harsh, if you will, sort of similar to distilling and how you have the heads and the tails.
And that's how we do it with wine too. We take the free run juice, the first press, the second press, all that kind of stuff too, right?
Absolutely. Just very similar process. So here's kind of like the water, and this kind of breaks down the minerality and weight on it, if you will. So you have the hard water that's like going, to put it as a perspective, like a Gerolsteiner or a Contrix kind of sparkling water, Pellegrino kind of sitting right in the middle, and then how soft the water tends to be in parts of Japan, like Nara region, which is highly sought after for its soft, silky water.
Yeah, if you've ever had some of this German water, it crunches in your mouth. Yeah, I would imagine you would.
Yeah, it's really fun. Types of pasteurization. So you have the nama, which every time you see nama on the bottle, first of all, make sure that sake is always kept refrigerated. It means it's unpasteurized. So that baby has not gone through any protection. So if it heats up, if it sees sunlight, things like that, you're going to spoil it. So very careful. Only a handful of sakes that are unpasteurized make it outside of Japan for that reason. It is still pretty it's like a baby, has no protection. So it has to be constantly under refrigeration and proper care. Namachozo, it's the one where it's pasteurized one time only, and then it goes out to the world. Namazume, it's pasteurized before it goes out into the world, so it's only one as well. And then Nikaihire means it's gone through the whole pasteurization, but on a regular sake, you can assume it's been pasteurized twice unless it's specified. Like with another sake, you might see like the word namachozo on a regular other sake. So you're referring to only one pasteurization. It's still a little more alive, has more vibrancy, but it's semi-protected, if you will.
And is it like with natural wine where the hipsters are drinking it unpasteurized and the traditional folks are down here?
Yep, there is definitely a lot of that. So people, I love going to Japan and visiting pre-pandemic about 5 times a year, 3 to 5. And one of the things I do is whenever I see a Nama, I'll enjoy it. But it's not as crazy as like the natural wine world, but it is preferred when you can. This is in Japan, there's so many ranges for temperature, especially for sake. So a really cool thing about sake, it has this multi-dimensional qualities to serve it. So you can grab a sake, like the first one you're gonna have, the hirai, which is done a little more sturdier, more artisan style, if you will. You can serve it cold, right out of the fridge. You can serve it room temperature, or you can warm it up and heat it up. And there's all these ranges of heating that you see throughout Japan, like Nurukan, which is a little more like body temperature, if you will. And then you start getting into Atsukan and more hotter. But that sake, it's gonna behave differently when it's cold or hot. So make sure you have in mind though, this is very important, take note. It's a Junmai or Hon Jozo tend to be fun generally when they're heated or cold, right? Because they have that flexibility. But when you have a Daiginjo, like the one we're gonna try at the end today, it is definitely, if you heat it up, you're gonna hide away the beautiful florals and sort of elegant components of it. And if it kind of makes sense, so let's say you buy a $3 Pinot Grigio, which I doubt anybody here ever does. But if you were to buy a $3 Pinot Grigio and put it in the freezer for an hour, it doesn't matter how they made it or how impure, how faulty it could be, right? Because once you kind of get it really cold, all the components compress and it's going to taste crisp and clean, hopefully. Same thing with sake. So when you heat it up, it's the opposite. You're going to hide away some of the imperfections, but also bring out some of the good things. And this is why when you go and historically to a sushi mom and pop's place throughout anywhere in the US or other parts of the world, you'll find hot sake in a box. And that's like the most popular style, being that since it's a little more rough around the edges, once you heat it up, it's easier to drink. Some of the seasonality in sake that you'll experience throughout Japan, although here we're barely just kind of catching onto all these different nuances. There's a shiboritate, which is in winter, usually like the fresh sake. The brewing season, it's a winter thing in Japan generally, although there's breweries that go year round as far as production. Usually you'll have anywhere from October, which is October 1st is sake day for that reason, all the way to like March. And this is like the time that you brew. Multiple reasons because of it. It's because it's colder, you have less bacteria and things affecting the brew, and also just lends for refrigeration, if you will. Harusake, which is like the spring celebration, Natsuzake for summer, and Hiyaroshi, which is like the fall. It's amazing. It tends to have this little more nuance, more spiced in some way, without any addition of anything. It's just a generous.
Eduardo, a couple of really naive questions. First, you can grow rice all year?
Yes, you can have several different yields of rice. You just keep planting it.
And do you use it only after you've dried the rice to make sake, or can you use it when it's like just harvested?
It has to be dried. So you can do an accelerated dryer, like put it in a little sort of kiln or something like that to get it a little faster. Otherwise, just naturally let it sit to dry. But yeah, it has to be dried. Otherwise, it's just mushy. It doesn't really work.
And these are some of the manners of serving sake, huh?
Yes, very important. If you're in a very traditional setting, first of all, I would say, even before all this, never pour your own. In Japanese culture, and I love this part of it, it really encapsulates what Japan is all about. When you're in a setting, formal setting, everybody looks after each other and pours glass sake or whatever you're drinking for each other, and never pouring your own. And I love it, absolutely love it. Always pour with both hands, sort of a sign of a little more respect, if you will. Don't shake it, don't hold it by the neck, and certainly don't spill, because that would be alcohol abuse.
Wow, that conjured a lot of humor for my wife and I to talk about later tonight. But really, I think it's a wonderful idea.
Absolutely. So now we'll dive into these babies.
You deserve a little break there, buddy. Come on, that was pretty impressive. You the stocky world in 27 slides in about 27 minutes. So good job.
I gotta say that's a new record for me. It has never happened, and I hope you guys know everything you need to know about sake now.
That's not even the point. But you did some really good stuff. Noble work. Now, when we picked the sake, there's a world of sake out there, but we wanted to kind of show a nice range. And so we looked for something classic, but high quality. And so that's what we're starting with, right?
Absolutely. So we have 3 different sakes that showcase a different style. Hopefully a little bit of like methods, and I'll get into that, and regionality as well. That's very, very important here. So we'll start with Hirai, which is, as I mentioned, this one, you can see it there. Hirai, it's a beautiful brewery. I've known and tasted their sakes for a couple of years now. I've always been a big fan, and I got to visit finally last year in January, before this whole thing happened called pandemic. Satoshi and I were really lucky to go visit the brewery. And upon arrival, you see this brewery, and it has a lot of character. It has a little bit of like, I don't know, like a dusty kind of like a grandma's house kind of feel to it, very traditional in some ways as well. And you walk in, the Toji, the brewmaster, Tanaka-san, actually, his name is, he greeted us. He's in his 70s, and I could only kind of put him sort of in a realm of a Japanese Clint Eastwood in some way. Steady hard check, really straight shooter of a guy, and he knows what he's doing. But also, aside from his just confidence walking around the brewery, I mean, it comes with 40 plus years of experience brewing sake, which is incredible to have under his belt. And that's given him sort of like a license to just let things work. It's really fun. The brewery was established in the 1700s, which is kind of puts it in perspective. Not a lot of breweries around the world or wineries and whatnot have this kind of legacy. Now, this is in Niigata City, or Niigata Prefecture. Niigata Prefecture, which is, you can see the little map in there, sort of in the center western part of Japan. It is gifted with the largest number of breweries in Japan. Out of 47 prefectures there are, this little region has 90 or just about 90 breweries in this little piece. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is the water, the quality of the water, very, very soft water that comes from the snow melt, and it comes in, it's very attractive to that. And a lot of these breweries started in the 1700s, 1800s.
Is this around Mount Fuji?
No, it's on the other side of the country. What you have here, it's called the Eshigo Mountains. And the Eshigo Mountains, it's kind of like the Japanese Alps that cut through the country. And there's, aside from great water, there's amazing skiing. I remember meeting a couple professional skiers and snowboarders. Oh my God, I just blanked out on his name. But one of the very famous snowboarder, very cool dude. And I was tasting sake with him, and he said, you know, this sake from Niigata really brings me home, because when he was 6, 7 years old, his mom used to take him to Niigata to snowboard and ski, and that's where he really cut his teeth doing it. He's American, and he said, I owe everything I do to the Niigata region and Yamagata. So pretty cool. Puts it in perspective. The bounty, there's one of the highest snowfalls in the country. Some years you see 10 feet of snow in this hills. So anyway, getting into the sake, this is a Gohyaku Mangoku. And as I mentioned, this is one of the rice strains that is favored in Niigata, is kind of adopted there. And it has this beautiful complexity, a little richness and weight in the palate. This is made with a special yeast that they use at the brewery, which is a combination of sort of like a morph of a Hiroshima yeast together with number 9. And at the end of the day, it's called a Tsukano yeast. I love the aromas here, and I might take a second to taste this so I can catch a break.
Should.
But also my mouth's watering just talking about it. So
there is something very floral and beautiful about it.
Certainly, I find sort of like a little more like acacias, yellow flowers, but I start diving into it and I get a little bit of layer of forest floor after a rain. Let's say you're going mushroom hunting or something like that. Not quite like alba and looking for black truffles, but you're looking more for porcinis and shiitake, but very faint layer. I get a little bit of a handful of roasted nuts, maybe roasted hazelnuts, a little bit of creme brulee, like freshly torched creme brulee with a little caramel. I don't know if you guys follow me on that. What do you guys think?
I get that sweet omelet that they give you at the sushi bar.
Tamago, yes.
Tamago?
Tamago or castera, yeah.
How cold does it have to be, this one, number 1?
How cold?
How cold?
Oh, I love, okay, as a rule of thumb, whenever you have sake, keep it in the fridge and then pour it and let it warm up in your glass. This one, it's one of the ones that I mentioned, has that multi-dimensional versatility where you can serve it cold right out of the fridge, room temperature, or even heat it up on the stovetop, and it's going to deliver an incredible experience. You can pair 3 different dishes with the same sake, just 3 different temperatures. This one in particular.
I can confirm that when I pulled it out, it smelled smelled almost like an animal pee because it was super cold, and now it's exactly what you said, like this floral taste, smell, but it was completely different when it was cold.
Yeah, look, it can be so generous, and the same reason is, as I was alluding to earlier, the Brewmaster has this way of, because of his confidence and experience making sake for so long, he lets things just work out themselves. He doesn't intervene much into the production. The team is like, I wouldn't say relaxed. You're not talking like Hawaiian relaxed, but they were like, nobody's rushing. Everybody's doing things at their own kind of pace, but organized. And I loved visiting the brewery. It just really encapsulated their style to me. It really put it in perspective, having tasted it for a couple of years and seeing it is like, oh, this is why. And a lot of their tools and presses and things were super ancient. They had pieces of the brewery that were original from the 1700s. So it kind of brings all that together. I would call it a real homage to artisan brew mastering, if you will. But amazing sake with, I dare to even taste it with bacon cheeseburger in some cases. It has this richness. You bite the burger, it has that like charred kind of feel to it, a little bit of bacon, hold the pickles, those kind of fight with it. But aside from that, it's incredible. And also you can do even some barbecue, like smoked tri-tip, a little bit of like a Southern style barbecue sauce. It works amazingly with this one. So the key of the game here with this sake is that it has complexity and it's gonna have a little richness. So it's almost like I love saying this about this sake in particular, it's like a hairy-chested sumo wrestler. It's like, but it's more of a teddy bear. So it kind of just hugs you. It's got the richness. It's got a lot of complexity to it. If it kind of makes sense in your head.
It's a lot of visuals.
It is a lot of visuals, and I don't know if I've ever seen that, but.
Jessica, how are you doing with the sake? Is it treating you okay?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this is great. I definitely got the mushrooms. That was the first thing I smelled on the nose was that shiitake. Definitely.
Nice. Susan French, how are you guys enjoying the sake? Is it treating you all right, you and Tom? Hi, Tom.
We're enjoying the sake. Your presenter is talking a little too fast for me.
Oh, I wanted to slow down. I'm sorry. This is being recorded, so we can play it in slow motion.
Whatever he's saying, I'm liking the booze.
You know, he's got that. He's definitely got that Japanese accent, like nailed though. I thought I was. You know, every time I was reading a word, I had to like read it 3 times to try to say, is that how you pronounce that? Amazing.
My Japanese is not perfect, but just all this practice and yeah. Anyway, and on top of that, I just want to make sure we don't run out of time and I can cover everything. So I tend to get excited and talk a little too fast. I apologize.
You're doing great, buddy. The energy is awesome. We all need it.
Thank you.
So
shall we?
Yeah. So any other questions about sake number 1 right now? Because we're going to move on to sake number 2.
I have a general question in regards to the shelf life of sake once you open it.
Very important.
So, sake is very generous. As opposed to wine, sake is never going to turn into vinegar. I mean, at least not within months. So, if you open a bottle of sake today and you keep it in the fridge and you try your best not to finish it, keep it in the fridge or in a very cool place, your cellar, if you will, and have some every once in a while, it's going to be fine within a month. Very forgiving. So within that month, 3 weeks to a month is going to be where it was intended to be by the brewery. Now, if you keep it past that, if you keep it 2 months, 3 months, something I love doing whenever I have a chance and the human strength not to finish that bottle, I will try it like every other month and such. And what happens is that it just gains this richness. It's almost like the sake went to the gym and it started working out and it just has more flavor, more richness. And we actually have a little ceremonial thing we do at home here. My wife, when it starts getting cold during the fall season, she'll put a leg of lamb in the crock pot with a bunch of vegetables or something along those lines, and then cook it overnight. And the next day we'll open the oldest sake we have in the fridge. So every bottle, I'll just mark it in the back. If I don't finish it, I'll put the date and then just put it in the back of the fridge. Drives her crazy, but it's quite enjoyable once you're going back and tasting it. Now, it's not something, as I mentioned, recommended because 3 weeks to a month is where it was intended to be, unless you start getting into experimenting and richer things.
None of us have that big of a fridge, buddy.
No, I have 3 fridges just for that. So yeah, certainly a good experiment and a great question, Hector.
Yeah, really good. I was a little worried because we also get some of the larger bottle, and I'm thinking, when am I going to open a large bottle of sake? But it doesn't go bad, and so it's a pretty good idea because it's a great way to entertain, and it's a little bit more formal service, and two hands are needed. Right?
Exactly. Don't shake.
You want to take that little bottle with 2 little hands. Need the big bottle. All right. So let's move to sake number 2.
Now this is very out of the box.
Oh, I didn't show you the picture of the last sake house.
There it is. That's the entrance of Cucina Sucano. As you walk in, just you can't even tell that it's a brewery.
And I don't know where Alex found all this detail, but she's got it, like, if you want to break down the label and all that stuff. So I'll send this to everybody at the end that's on the Zoom with us here, and some nice notes from the winery. So here's sake number 2.
So this is Imayo Tsukasa. So also founded in the 1700s, a lot of legacy behind this brewery. It's located in the center of Niigata City, which is, it's rare to see like an urban brewery, if you will, but they've been there since the 1700s. And when we walked in there, luckily we were there the same trip, and it was quite a juxtaposition of not only their styles, but you can see their packaging and the way they run their tasting experience. They have like a tasting room with, you can taste chocolates, you can taste sake ice cream, you can taste all kinds of pairings with cheese and things like that. So they are masters at their craft. And starting, as I mentioned, by the bottle itself, and what's inside of it. So once you pour it and taste a sip, this is a complete departure from the last one. There's a couple reasons. They, even though they've been in business for over 200 years, they actually are a very young brewery. So if the brewmaster for the last brewery was sort of a Clint Eastwood kind of character, the guy for this one is more of a younger Keanu Reeves, or at least that's how I kind of saw it when we went and met them. They are very high energy. They're always looking out of the box, and they're playing with proprietary different yeast strains, koji, because there's a few strains of koji that will alter the acidity of the sake and produce a style that's more avant-garde, a little more that you start seeing sprinkles throughout Japan as far as this style of sake. It is a karakuchi, super dry, it's called. The nose, although it has a little bit of I don't know, incense, a little bit of faint mushrooms, but this is more of a dried mushroom rather than after a rainy day, as we did with hirai. The palate is where it just carries all the energy, a lot of stamina, a lot of high acid, and very, I mean, there's a connection with wine, at least in my head, with this wine, because you have the kind of like linear acidity that sometimes sake tends to be a little lacking off, if you will. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think, having tasted the hirai first.
The first thing I want to say, and anyone is welcome to say something here, is how do I pronounce this word right here? Go hayaku mangoku.
You can kind of split it in your head as if you were speaking German, if you will. Go hyaku mangoku. Go hyaku mangoku. Once you see it all together, it's a little intimidating. But go hyaku mangoku.
All right.
So same
great.
rice strain that we tasted with the hirai. So there's a couple like similarities here. It's also from Niigata, within the same prefecture, same rice strain. The yeast has a little bit of 9, which the other one did as well. But then once you get into the nitty gritty of this, it is a completely different outcome. They love to promote this sake with the grilled meat, with red meat. So this is like a steakhouse kind of sake. And I've put it to the test a few times. Incredible. When you have just a piece of ribeye, you put it in the grill, salt and pepper, nothing much to it, and just keep it medium rare. This is an ideal pairing. And even dishes like foie gras has done very well for me with this one. Now, the funny thing is this one, because of its seriousness and sharp acidity and the amino acids, it doesn't really play well with sweetness. So I've tried it a few times with either ripe tomatoes or strawberries or desserts, and it's just not the best friend. Where one like hirai is a little more friendly both ways, if you will. But
I get lost between describing it as slightly smoky or sea salt or
I like that, yeah.
even iodine.
Ooh, like on the nose, and then it travels into the palate as well.
I haven't tasted it yet, but just the nose is really captivating and kind of
it's exotic in some way.
Very exotic, yeah.
I have to say that there's this little, when I was a kid, I used to eat like lemons, but I also used to eat the little lemon bark.
Oh.
And lime bark. It's real interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it has that zip.
What trees were you growing up in there, Hector? I thought your wife would like that.
Yeah, she found me there. We are swinging.
So it's really cool. And did you describe this as drier?
This is a super dry. Okay. That is what they're going for. So there's a scale that you might see at any given sake, although not everybody does it uniformly, but it's called SMB, sake meter value, or Nihonshu. And what this is, it's a representation of chemically checked of sweetness and dryness. So you have -10 to +10 roughly, although some can go higher or lower, but the higher is drier. That's all you have to remember. And this one, I believe, is a +10. So you're like really up there in the dry level where it pairs very well with the sort of like meats and things like that as they're intended.
But there's good length on the finish too. It's got a wonderful polish to it in the mouth.
I'm going really far on this one, but sometimes it reminds me a little bit of Sancerre in the way the mineral kind of component in the mid palate takes you all the way to the finish.
Now, on the first bottle, we had a screw cap, and on this one, we have a very interesting closure. It's kind of like a pop-off top.
Indeed,
like
with
top.
A little bit of aluminum foil in there. And it's very common throughout Japan to see this up on the higher end sort of realm of production. And what it does, it keeps it very sealed in some way. So it protects from any oxygen exchange and things like that, aside from being quite different, if you will. The wine world, we've probably seen those more often with like the glass caps, but nothing with this style.
I have a question.
What's the price of this one here?
The Angeli family, and I'm sorry, I don't know your first names.
Fernando and Diana.
Diana. Yes. There you go. All right.
Oh, Ian, do you have the pricing for this one?
Yeah. Oh, I will. Yes. Give me 1 sec.
Excellent.
Go ahead, Angeli family.
Oh, okay. Just a question. I was in Japan and they're very traditional, and as far as drinking the sake and what is the what is the process? I mean, do you take a sip or eat the steak, or it's like what is the process? I mean, they're very traditional. I know I saw some shows that they're small portions of sushi and stuff like that. What is just to get a little bit of a heads up on because we're planning to go to Japan.
You want to answer that, or Tsuko-san?
Sure. If you think about sake almost like wine, I think that would be the closest equivalent, except traditionally they've served it in smaller glasses like the little ochoko cups that you saw. Yeah. But nowadays, the younger Japanese are actually enjoying sake in wine glasses. So the way they enjoy it is practically the same. And more and more sakes are actually made nowadays to really be aromatic as well. So you want a big glass that you can put your nose in and smell. And just don't think too hard about it. It's just a beverage meant to enhance your food.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Which leads us to a very important, Setsuko-san, do you want to mention something as well?
I think I choose depend on the sake style.
Mm-hmm.
And I can enjoy same sake with different cup like this.
Yes. Thank you. Steven?
Yes, I have a question, and that is, we have different glasses and shapes for wine. Do you have differences in how sake will taste if you use different styles? A Pinot glass versus a Cab glass versus a port glass?
Absolutely. Very, very important question. And actually, the Riedel company has spent some time developing the right glasses for sake. So what they identified as the ideal one after hundreds of different tastings with professionals throughout Japan, for Daiginjo, it looks more like a Riesling glass. I don't know if you've seen the Riedel Riesling glass. It's a little more of a flute, wider flute, if you will. And then they also created a Junmai glass, which is also almost more of a martini glass, but then it has a closure in the top. And I believe, Setsuko-san, we've judged out of that one, right?
So, Bizen Yaki is famous for this kind of Junmai sake. This kind of shape.
Also, yep.
But yeah. And a little bit this kind.
Exactly. Definitely. So yeah, to answer your question, they have identified different styles. Obviously, sake can be quite diverse, as we mentioned and over. Like Daiginjos are a little more floral, more pretty, more aromatic, where Hon Jozos and Junmais are a little more masculine, if you will, or more complex. So that's why the glass differences. But yeah, if you look at Riedel in their catalog or online, they'll have the sake glasses they recommend.
I put up on the screen the copy of the event. So if you have a hard time remembering the sake, you can look back at this page. But you also could click here and go straight to the sake on the website. Our first sake tonight, $35. Sake number 2, $39. And then we're about to taste sake number 3, and I don't want to spoil it for you yet.
No, this is extremely welcomed at my house, and it never lasts. And I was so excited to have an excuse to open a new bottle, because once I open one, it's hard to not to finish, as I mentioned. Even the kids enjoy smelling it, not drinking too much of it. But this is a brewery. Now we're gonna go from Niigata, which we now very well acquainted, and we spent some time getting acquainted with 2 different producers with different techniques and methods, all the way to Yamagata. So the Yamagata Prefecture, it is very important in Japan, because as you can see, this little part right here, it is a GI. So in wine, we know there's different GI recognitions for champagne, for Jerez, for cava, all these different things that are recognized because of the area and the style of production. So you cannot go and make a sparkling wine in Italy and call it champagne, right? So same thing, they've identified with Yamagata sort of like the components that create this style, and therefore they were gifted or earned the first GI status in Japan. So Yamagata is in the mountain ranges, as you can see here. It's just north of Niigata, also sharing the mountain ranges of Echigo, if you will. In this case, there's a lot of differences. And if you already poured it in your glass and gave it a quick whiff, it is a completely different style. You have to put your helmet and your elbow pads and knee pads and put a seatbelt, because it has so much given jumping out of the glass, especially coming back from the black that we just did. So it's got a wider realm of flowers, and it's like walking through the market, farmer market in the morning, past the florist. So here we have a different rice strain. It's called Dewa Sansan, and it is pride and joy of Yamagata, and it creates in conjunction with their water, which is pristine snow melt water, as well as similar to the Niigata kind of profile. There's the polishing ratio here that's a huge component. So you're getting just to the very, very hard 35% left out of the grain of rice. And so you have a daiginjo level. Actually, this chart should say daiginjo, but if you want to call it ginjo, it's fine. But it's definitely like the most elegant kind of floral component, but not only the nose, which the nose already, I can smell this glass all day. I will never get tired of it. It just has, I don't know if you want to call it like a little bit of anise. It's got a little bit of like fresh cut green pineapple.
Absolutely, the anise, yeah.
Oh, such a stamp of Yamagata. But then in the palate, it just has so much layering and complexity, and you can tell that this is a completely different style. Not only on as I mentioned, the rice strain, the regionality to it, and the hand of the producer here with the different yeast, and also it's a little more generous on the alcohol. It has 17%, so 1% more.
There's a lot of tropical fruits here too,
Totally. Green banana a little bit, but not that banana that kind of steers you away from things. It's really, really pleasant.
Yeah, and then I get it's like mango and
honeydew melon too.
Honeydew melon,
yes,
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Delicious.
that's when and then you put it in your mouth and it just feels expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this like really luxurious mouthfeel on this product.
Oh, it just goes and goes and goes and goes. This is actually in Japan, Benten Goto Juzo. It's sort of seen as a cult producer. hard to find around Japan. We visited Goto-san and his son, and we had a fantastic visit where we toured the brewery, which is, again, completely different than the last two. You have a very traditional, just pure elegance. Since you walk through that little door, it is inside is like all these beautiful finishes of different woods, beautiful tapestries. The family was incredible, and they're definitely held in very high regard and highly sought after throughout Japan. This is the first time that they've been in the United States, and this just recently arrived. And correct me if I'm wrong, Satoshi-san, but I think 6 months ago, it's the first arrival of the sakes, and they completely bring a different proposition. Again, they're elevating. It's like an orchestra of different aromas and layering and in the palate, and it's quite unique. I want to hear your impressions. What do you think, Ian?
I mean, if you're gonna win me over to sake, it's gonna be right here, baby. But I enjoyed all three of them, and as they're unique. I really got what I was expecting in sake number one. It's a very good quality though. It had good concentration. I really am curious to do some food with sake number two, and I really want to play around with that. And I don't know if it's just the black bottle, but we have sold quite a bit of this already, and people are pulling this off of the website at a pretty good rate. And so it has a good reputation, and I've not had a single phone call where people are asking me for sake recommendations yet, and I'm dreading that day. But I'm going to keep your phone number right next to my desk.
Please. Yeah, anybody, feel free to just shoot me an email. I'm not sure if my email was in the document, but feel free to forward it to everyone. I have friends all the time, either email me or text me when they sit down at a restaurant or they go to the store and say, hey, what do you recommend? Or what should I do with this? And please, I love talking sake at all times.
1-800 Sake Doctor.
Exactly. Sake drinker. Same thing.
Could be good. Hector, what did you think of that third sake?
Well, it kind of blew my mind because the complexity of it was just outrageous. The anise, jasmine, the tropical kind of honeydew melon, it's just fantastic. And I'm gonna order, definitely 2 or 3 bottles of this.
Right. See, you already converted one of my big red wine drinkers there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cheers to that.
That's awesome.
It is quite a fun proposition. And what we wanted to do here is, again, kind of dissect, although there's so many different styles, but you have the first one, it's sort of my introduction, my business card to people that have never had sake. And I don't want to go too floral and sweet or elegant or too rich. So this is always a great sake to have at home. And I personally, when I have somebody come to my house and they said, hey, I don't know, I've never had sake, I don't know if I'm going to like it, always start with that. When people are seasoned and they want to be adventurous and try with different things, that's when I go to the black, because it kind of connects, again, kind of like the wine and sake world. And then the Benten, it's just, there's no way. You got to be dead not to enjoy this, because it just has so much things going on in here.
It's very pleasurable, a very hedonistic sake solution for sure. And now this is a 115 bottle, and those that are on the Zoom get a nice discount from us tonight. So we put that to work, and we want to thank you, because you just really pounded it out there in an hour, gave us an incredible amount of information, and that was just really, really amazing. I could have never gotten here without you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, we should make this a recurring thing, and we can touch another sakes or just do another one-on-one. My wife bet me $100 that I wouldn't do it in an hour. And now I'm going to go collect my $100.
All right. Well,
she's never seen me do that.
I hope that's pleasurable.
Absolutely. We'll buy more sake with those $100. I'll go on your website right now. Thank you so much, guys. It was quite a treat. It's great to have that engagement. Setsuko-san, thanks for joining us from Japan, and everyone.
Yeah, it's good to see you all, and thank you Satoshi, for all of your support and making this happen for us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was great.
Arigato.
Great night, everybody. We're looking forward to seeing you soon. Our Zoom into Wine calendars continuing to grow. We have our Stars of Rosé event up on the calendar now. We're doing 14 rosé over 2 different dates. And then we're going to try to do our first live event like right in the middle of it, because we're going to have this great access to all of this rosé wine. So we want to make sure that we celebrate that. And so take a look at the calendar. We call it the Pink Party, our first live event, because it's going to be pretty casual. We're not, we're doing it in kind of a short window, and a friend of mine's gallery is letting us use the space. So if you check out the Pink Party, I'll be DJing it. My name changed this year to DJ COVID-19 pounds. And so we have all of the Stars of Rosés there, and some of the producers are going to be there with me. And we're going to do it at a place called Community, which is down right here in the Arts District. They are downtown LA cobblers. They make shoes from really good sources, and leathers, and all the products and materials are made special for them. He was the shoe designer for Tom's, and his wife was the shoe designer for or involved in the shoe business at Asics. And so they're a power couple in the shoe business, and they make these really cool downtown LA shoes. I tell them all the time, these should be like $500 a pair. They're not, they're like about $100 a pair, and they're really cool looking, well made right here in LA. And so they've got a little shoe gallery, but they raise a lot of money for charity. And so that's what we're going to do at the door. It's $50 a ticket, and then you can give $1. You could give $1 per charity. You could give a bunch if you've got a lot of money and you can afford it. There'll be little benefits to trying on some shoes that night if you guys want to take advantage of their expertise. But we'll have this big showroom in the back here, and we'll line up some food trucks as the event grows. If it's small, I'll just have a couple of cheese plates and stuff out there, but we'll make it the most of it. It's coming up pretty fast, but we just kind of want to dip our toe back in the water and get some good people together, so we keep the price light and just celebrate the moment and the improving health here in our city. So join us and look at the Zoom calendar. We've got a lot of other fun stuff coming down the pipe. Next month's big event is our Stars of Pinot. And we're going to do that. We're going to spread that out over the entire month of July. We're going to do 4 different dates. And we've got an insane lineup of Pinot producers. So it's going to be really a comprehensive Pinot 101. And so we thank everyone for being here. And we hope that you guys have a great night. See you soon. And go Dodgers.
Oh, no. Bye.
Sneak that in, buddy. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.